The worst part about Thanksgiving was not the silence. It was the way my aunt set the table. Every year, without fail, she placed my cousin Derek at the head, beside my uncle, in the chair with the armrests. Every year, she arranged the good china, the ivory set with the gold rim that had belonged to my grandmother in a careful semicircle that somehow managed to exclude my end of the table. I ate off the everyday plates, the beige ones with the hairline crack running through the center. I had been eating off that cracked plate since I was 7 years old, and I was 29 now, and some part of me had stopped expecting anything different. "Claire, the rolls," my aunt said, not looking up from the gravy she was stirring. I brought the rolls. I sat back down. I watched my cousin's wife receive a compliment on her earrings, watched my uncle pour wine for everyone at his end of the table, watched the conversation move around me the way water moves around a stone efficiently, without acknowledgement. I was not part of this family. I knew it the way you know the weather before you check your phone, something in the pressure of the air. My mother had died when I was 3. A car accident on I-95, February, black ice. My aunt, her older sister, had taken me in. She never let me forget the generosity of that decision. Not in a loud way. In the quiet, consistent way of someone who keeps a ledger. I left the next morning before anyone else was awake. I drove back to my apartment in Providence, changed into my scrubs, and went to work a double at the hospital because the holiday differential paid well, and because I had long ago learned to find my peace in useful places. It was the following Tuesday, on my day off, that everything changed. I had taken the bus downtown because my car was at the shop. I was sitting near the back, earbuds in, not listening to anything, just wanting the barrier, when the bus lurched to a stop and a woman got on. She was old. I would later learn she was 73, and she moved the way people move when they are accustomed to pain. Carefully, with great precision, testing each step before committing her weight to it. She had a cane with a brass handle shaped like a hawk in flight. She was dressed well. A camel coat, real leather gloves, a silk scarf the color of pine needles. She looked at the seats and something in her face flickered. The bus was nearly full. A teenager in the aisle seat beside me had his bag on the window seat. I reached over, tapped his shoulder, and nodded toward the woman. He moved the bag without complaint. She settled in beside me slowly, cane across her knees, and let out a breath that sounded like it had been held for a very long time. "Thank you," she said. "Of course." We rode in silence for a few minutes. Then she tilted slightly in my direction and said, "You're a nurse." I looked down. I was wearing my hospital badge, clipped to my jacket zipper. "Yes, my granddaughter is a nurse. In Denver." She said it the way people say things they are proud of but have not been allowed to say often enough. Then she went quiet again, and I thought that was the end of it. But at the next stop, when she tried to stand, her cane slipped on the wet floor mat and she grabbed the seat back hard. I was on my feet before I thought about it. Occupational reflex. I steadied her, checked her grip, walked her to the front. She stepped off and I followed without deciding to, and we stood on the sidewalk in the November cold while she got her breath back. "I'm fine," she said firmly, in the voice of a woman who has been told she is not fine one too many times. "I know," I said. She looked at me then, fully. The way people rarely look at strangers, without the social film over it, just direct and clear. Her eyes were gray. She had a strong face, the kind that would have been striking at 40, and was still striking now for entirely different reasons. "What is your name?" she asked. "Claire. Claire Ashworth." Something happened in her expression, something I could not read yet. She reached into her coat pocket and produced a card, cream cardstock, engraved and held it out. "I would very much like to speak with you," she said. "Not today, but soon if you're willing." She paused. "My name is Eleanor Voss." I took the card. I did not know what Voss meant yet. I would learn. I called the number 2 days later, more out of curiosity than anything else. She answered on the second ring, as though she had been expecting me. We met at a coffee shop in the East Side, the kind with exposed brick and good lighting and prices that made me aware of my budget in the way I usually tried not to be. She was already seated when I arrived. There was a folder on the table in front of her. Manila, slim, closed. She let me order, let me settle, and then she folded her hands on top of the folder and said, I have been looking for someone for 26 years. I believe that someone may be you. I set down my cup. I'm listening. My son's name was Thomas Voss. He died in October of 1996. A brain aneurysm. He was 31. His wife, his girlfriend, they were not yet married, was 8 months pregnant when he died. She spoke without flinching, but I could see what it cost her. The woman's name was Sandra Mercer. She was 24. After Thomas died, Sandra disappeared. She moved, changed her contact information, stopped responding to our attorney's letters. The baby Thomas's daughter was born in January of 1997. We were not informed, we were not contacted, we did not meet her. She looked at me steadily. I have never stopped looking. The math was quiet and terrible. January 1997. I was born January 14th, 1997. My mother's name had been Sandra. Sandra Mercer Ashworth, she had used her married name. My mother had died when I was 3. Before she died, apparently, she had told my aunt enough to keep me away from a family I had never known existed. I did not say any of this out loud. Not yet. I was a nurse. I knew how to hold information carefully while I assessed the full picture. Why did she leave? I asked. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. Thomas's estate was substantial. His grandfather had built a manufacturing business in the 60s. By the time Thomas died, the family held assets of considerable value. Sandra and Thomas were not married. Under Rhode Island law at the time, she had limited automatic claim, but any child of Thomas's would have been a direct heir. She paused. We offered, through our attorney, to support Sandra through the pregnancy and to recognize the child fully. She did not respond. We believe she was advised incorrectly that we intended to take the child from her. We never wanted that. We only wanted to know our grandchild. I drove home in a state of careful calm. I was good at careful calm. 22 years of being the wrong person at every table teaches you to process things alone, in private, where no one can see you absorbing the weight of something enormous. I called my aunt that evening. I did not tell her about Eleanor Voss. I asked, very casually, about my mother. What she remembered. Whether my mother had ever talked about my father. My aunt paused for exactly half a second too long. Your father was nobody, Claire. He passed before you were born. There's nothing to tell. Do you know his last name? Another pause. I don't remember. Your mother didn't talk about him much. She remembered. I understood, in that half-second pause, that she had always remembered, that she had known exactly who Thomas Voss was, exactly what his family had tried to do, exactly what my mother had run from and why, or at least, what she'd been told. And she had chosen, every year of my life, the cracked plate. I did not confront her. I was not my aunt's confessor. I was Thomas Voss's daughter, possibly. And there was a DNA test to arrange first. And I intended to be certain before I did anything else. Eleanor's attorney was a man named Philip Greer, a quiet, efficient man who operated out of a firm on Westminster Street that had framed maritime prints on the walls and smelled like cedar. He arranged the test with a clinical lab in Boston. Eleanor and I both submitted samples. We would have results in 10 to 14 days. On day 4, my aunt called. I heard you've been asking questions, she said. I hadn't asked anyone anything except her. From who? It doesn't matter. I want you to understand something. Whatever anyone has told you, your mother made her choices for good reasons. She was protecting you. From what? From people who wanted to use you, who saw you as a commodity, an asset, not a person. Her voice was tight. She believed this, I realized. Some version of it. She had accepted what my mother told her and built 26 years of justification on top of it. I'm going to find out the truth, I said. I'm not asking your permission. She hung up. I spent the next 10 days working my shifts and trying not to count the hours. On day 6, I came home to find my apartment door unlocked. I was certain I had locked it. I stood in the hallway for a long moment, then called my neighbor, a retired police officer named Gerald, and asked if he would come with me to check it. He did. Nothing was visibly disturbed, but my laptop had been moved a small thing, a few inches, and the drawer in my bedside table was not quite closed the way I left it. I always closed it flush. Always. I photographed everything. I filed a police report. The officer was patient and not particularly alarmed. I was alarmed enough for both of us. Gerald helped me change the locks that evening. He also lent me a Ring camera for the door, and I bought a second one for the window that faced the fire escape. I did not tell Eleanor. I was not yet certain the two things were connected, and I did not want to cause alarm I couldn't justify. But I sent a message to Philip Greer's office the next morning documenting what had happened and requesting they note it. It was my cousin Derek who made me certain. He texted me on day 8. We were not close. We had never been close. He was 4 years older than me and had been raised with the unconscious ease of a boy who never had to wonder whether he belonged. Hey! My mom's pretty upset. I don't know what's going on, but whatever you're doing, I think you should let it go. For the family. I read it 3 times. Then I replied, "What does your mother think I'm doing, Derek?" His response took 40 minutes. Something about Dad's business contacts. Old family stuff. I don't know the details. Old family stuff. His family, not mine. He had never thought of it differently, and I understood, reading those 2 words, that he had grown up knowing something or sensing it that I had never been told. I called Philip Greer. "Someone entered my apartment," I said. "My cousin is texting me about business contacts. I think someone in my family, my aunt's side, is worried about what the DNA results will show." He was quiet for a moment. "Miss Ashworth, do you have somewhere else you could stay for the next few days?" I stayed with a friend from the hospital named Renata, who had a guest room and a large, loud dog named Biscuit, and the kind of steady, uncomplicated kindness that I had been rationing carefully my whole life because I had never quite believed I deserved it freely. The results came on a Thursday morning. Philip called me before I had finished my coffee. "The test confirms a first-degree paternal relationship," he said. "You are Thomas Voss's biological daughter." I sat with that for a moment. The coffee steamed. Biscuit put his head on my knee. Outside, Providence was doing its gray November thing, indifferent and beautiful. "Okay," I said. "Mrs. Voss would like to speak with you at your convenience. She asked me to tell you, and I'm quoting her directly here, that there is no urgency. She has waited 26 years and she can wait as long as you need." Eleanor and I met again at the same coffee shop. She looked different this time, or I was seeing differently. The gray eyes, the angle of her jaw, Thomas's daughter, her granddaughter. She was carrying something when she came in. A small box, the kind that holds jewelry, navy blue with a hinged lid. She set it on the table but did not open it immediately. "I want to tell you about your father," she said first. She talked for a long time. Thomas had been quiet, she said. Methodical. He had studied economics at Brown, had worked in his grandfather's firm for 3 years before his death, had been learning the business with the earnestness of a man who respected things that had been built carefully. He had loved hiking, terrible puns, and strong coffee. He had brought Sandra home for dinner twice. Eleanor had liked her. "She was frightened of the money," Eleanor said, not unkindly. "Some people are. It can look like power being pointed at you, even when it's being offered." I thought of my aunt, of what she must have told my mother, of what my mother, young and grieving and 8 months pregnant, must have believed. "She was wrong," I said, "but I think she was scared." "I know." Eleanor's voice was gentle. "I've made my peace with her. I hope you can too, eventually." She opened the box then. Inside, on a cushion of ivory silk, was a locket. Round, gold, old, the kind with a small photograph inside. She lifted it carefully and opened it for me to see. On one side, a young man with quiet eyes and an unguarded smile. On the other side, a woman I recognized, though I had not seen her face in 26 years. My mother, young, laughing, her hair loose. "Thomas gave her this when they found out she was pregnant," Eleanor said. "She left it behind when she went. I kept it." She paused. "I always hoped I would have someone to give it to." She closed the locket and set it in my palm. I am not a person who cries easily. I come from people who treated emotion like an embarrassment, a mess to be managed. But I sat in that coffee shop in Providence in November with my father's face and my mother's face in the palm of my hand, and I did not manage it. I let it happen. It happened for a long time. Eleanor waited, with the patience of a woman who had been waiting for 26 years and had learned to be very good at it. In the weeks that followed, Philip Greer was methodical and thorough in the way that good attorneys are when they have a clear case and the time to build it properly. The Voss estate had been held in trust pending the identification of Thomas's heirs. As his only child, I was the sole beneficiary of that trust. There were also questions of the funds that had been managed and mismanaged during the years of uncertainty, questions that involved my aunt's husband and a business connection to the estate's custodial account that became, upon investigation, considerably more complicated than it had any right to be. I did not pursue those complications. Philip's firm did. That is what attorneys are for. My aunt called once more during this period. Her voice had lost its texture, that particular quality of authority it had always carried with me, the weight of the person who controls the good china. "I want you to know I was trying to protect you," she said. "Everything I did." "I know what you did," I said. "And I know you believed you were right." I paused. "But you sat me at the wrong end of the table for 22 years and told yourself it was kindness." She had nothing to say to that. "I'm not going to hate you," I said. "But I'm done pretending I owe you something I don't." I hung up, gently. "With both hands, the way you set down something, you are finally, after a very long time, putting down for good." Eleanor introduced me to the rest of the family, a careful, unhurried process she managed with the quiet authority of a woman who had been running things from the background for decades. A cousin in Newport who made furniture by hand. An uncle who had been her husband's brother, now in his 80s, who shook my hand and looked at my face for a long time and said, "You've got Thomas's forehead, you know." I did not know. I was learning. I kept working my shifts at the hospital. I liked the work. I was good at it. Money, I was discovering, does not change what you're good at or what gives you purpose. It only removes the exhaustion of worrying about the margin. I slept better. I ate off whatever plates I chose. Philip finalized the trust transfer in March, 4 months after Eleanor and I met on that bus. The number involved was large enough that it did not feel real for several weeks, and then it settled into something I was slowly learning to carry without bracing. The locket I wore every day. I had it cleaned and the chain replaced with one that sat properly at my collarbone. On my lunch breaks at the hospital, I sometimes opened it in the locker room, my father's quiet eyes, my mother's loose hair, both of them caught in a moment before loss, and I thought about the strange, indirect mercy of things. My mother had run from a family she misunderstood, frightened of something that was not what she thought it was. She had died before she could know that. My aunt had kept the secret for reasons that were not purely selfish, but that were not purely right either. Eleanor had kept a locket for 26 years and kept looking. I had taken a seat beside a woman with a hawk-handled cane on an ordinary Tuesday in November, and here I was. I had a new tradition now for Thanksgiving. Eleanor's house, in the east side, with a table that had room for everyone and no hierarchy in the seating. She cooked the turkey herself, which she was very particular about, and she set the good china for every single person at the table, without exception. The plates matched. They always matched. I sat where I liked. I had been sitting where I liked for a while now, and I was getting used to it, the uncomplicated, unremarkable feeling of belonging exactly where you are, at a table that was yours all along, in a family that had been looking for you across 26 years, and a city, and the particular grace of a Tuesday bus.